Good to go. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Basalt Town Council meeting. We're going to start at 5 o'clock today with a work session on affordable housing and have some interaction with our BAC, Basalt Area Community Housing Committee, to talk about a number of administrative and management issues in our housing inventory. So, Sarah, are you running this, or Susan, or James?
James and I think the chair of BAC, Kathy Click, will be handling this, but James can kick it off with a few words.
Is Kathy dialing in? Looks like
She's on the Zoom call there.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm in.
we might start by introducing all the BAC members that we have here this evening. Let me stop sharing my screen so you can see them all. We do have Kathy Click with us on Zoom, who's the chair of BAC. We've got Ann Baker, who is also a BAC member, and then Mike Kozdrowski. We also have Doug McDonald. He's still in the attendees section as well. We have 5 current members of BAC, and we've got 4 of it with us tonight. The other one is Clyde Foster, who was not able to attend. So this evening, BAC has outlined and made some recommendations on some community housing related issues and items that they have been discussing recently, and they're outlined in the staff memo, which is in your packet, and I'll also share my screen with it.
James, if I may just interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
I think this is maybe the only time we can do this on the schedule, but to amplify on Susan's comment, we want to thank Cesar in the back there. Mr. Aguilar is taking a new career. He's been swept up by the city of Aspen, of all places. He's going to be at the Wheeler, and they're lucky to have him. He is also a new dad. He's going to be a dad very shortly. And he's been a steady and calm director for Grassroots, and we really will miss you and appreciate it, having all your hard work and getting the word out to the public. So thanks, Cesar, and best of luck in all your future. Okay. Okay. Excellent. Okay, James, thanks.
Okay, sure. So staff this evening will briefly outline these items, and then BAC members also will provide some comments. And then BAC would like to hear from council on these items to see if they are on the right track to kind of move them forward.
Recording stopped.
Not sure where that's
a ghost in the machine.
In addition to these items, BAC will be meeting in January with representatives of CHAFA, the Colorado Housing Finance Authority, to learn about some of the tools that we have available related to partnerships on creating affordable housing related to the Basalt Forward 2030 project. And council will also have a work session in January with CHAFA. The items that BAC has been discussing and that they've outlined, the first one is the Real Estate Transfer Housing Mitigation Code amendments. The code contains a provision where developers can get a reduction in their housing mitigation requirements from 25% to 15% if they do a 1.5% real estate transfer assessment. Currently doesn't distinguish in the code between applying this reduction to rental versus for sale housing projects. And we had a recent application that tried to apply this reduction to a rental application.
Recording in progress.
And BAC is recommending that council and P&Z consider code amendments to only apply that reduction and that exemption to for sale projects, with the idea and justification that town probably doesn't get as much bang for our buck with the RETA, in that rental projects don't turn over as much. So BAC is suggesting code amendments there. Other items that BAC has been discussing include mitigation requirements. BAC is thinking that it is a good idea to look at our mitigation requirements, but believe we need to update our data on our Basalt specific affordable housing gaps in capacity to provide housing. The regional housing study had a good picture of the valley issue that was done a couple years ago, but Bach believes we need to boil it down to the Basalt level and update some of that data. And we have $30,000 in the 2022 budget for affordable housing related studies. Other topics Bach has been considering include affordable housing parking reductions. During the Parcel 5 Cypress Meadows sketch plan review, there was a lot of conversation about parking requirements making it difficult to build 3-bedroom affordable housing units. And so Bach has recommended updating the parking for affordable housing to be similar to the R4MD parking requirements, which you have in your packet. And let me see if I can show you those. The R4MD requirements include one bedroom, one space per bedroom up to 2-bedroom units. And then for 3 bedrooms, they still require only 2 spaces per unit. Bach and staff did some kind of case studies. One of them was the affordable housing parking for the Roaring Fork Apartments. They indicated that they had 70 parking spaces that they provided stickers for, and that would line up with the R4MD parking requirements. They are a majority of 1 and 2 bedrooms, but they do have a couple of 3 bedrooms. Bach was interested in studying the ability to reduce the parking requirements for affordable housing projects to the R4MD parking limitations. Other topics that have come up during Bach's recent discussions include a voluntary buy-down process. Bach would recommend exploring a voluntary buy-down process, kind of like the Veil and Deed program, where the town would pay free market owners to deed restrict their free market units on a voluntary basis to make them affordable housing. Bach hasn't went very far into this thought process yet, but thought it was a good one to explore, and I think Bach members have some comments on this, so they'd be interested to hear if council would like them to kind of pursue more research into the topic. And then finally, the items that we have in the memo include Special Housing Evaluation Committee, which is the SHEC committee, waiver criteria. The SHEC is a board that's established in the housing guidelines that reviews individual affordable housing tenant requests for income and employment requirement waivers. So if you remember, in our guidelines, we require a tenant of affordable housing to be employed in the valley at least 1,500 hours a year. So SHEC would review individual waivers where people wouldn't be able to meet those requirements on a one-time basis. We didn't have any criteria to review those, and Bach thought it necessary to establish some criteria. So we've got those criteria in your packet. And Bach reviewed them and recommended approval of those criteria. So those are topics and projects that Bach has been working on among other discussions. And so staff would suggest now hearing from Bach members on other comments that they may have as well. Are there other Bach comments members would like to provide?
Bach people?
It all went dark.
Oh, it looks like Mike's and Kathy are undoing their mutes.
No, I don't have any comments other than I think this is more of a Q&A, as I understand it, and just having a broader discussion about some of these, maybe, or more specific to some of these topics, and maybe a broader conversation in general about housing in the community. But I have no specific comments I'm going to offer at this point.
Thanks, Mike.
I think that one thing that we have been discussing as a group is the ability of Bach to make a bigger impact in the affordable housing inventory and in how Basalt looks at affordable housing. So one of the things that we have been discussing is our charge is to be an advisory committee and to make recommendations on current proposals and developments. And I think that at this point, it feels like that's not helping to solve the affordable housing gap or deal with the gap, and that we're looking at ways that we can be more impactful going forward.
So just a procedural sort of question, so, no particular order. So the first order of business was to discuss use of the RETA for rental versus for sale projects. So if we have strong consensus from council, as evidenced in our work session, do we compile these and then bring them back in some sort of formal amendment at some future date? We're not gonna take action during the work session here.
No, I think it's really ultimately providing direction to
Okay.
Bob to
Good.
work on these a bit.
Yeah,
more
on
bring
these
it back to
topics
council.
and other topics that may come up in the
Gary?
conversation.
Well, on that real estate transfer assessment, I mean, I really love the fact that you guys are moving beyond just looking at development applications, because I do believe, having a citizen committee making recommendations on how do we help, we're not gonna solve the affordable housing crisis, but at least we can participate in it and actually come up with some, really innovative ways to address it. But the real estate transfer assessment is something that we've been struggling with as a council, because, you come in, I'm happy to say goodbye to the rental thing, but I'd even like to discuss saying goodbye to the for sale thing. I don't wanna see a reduction, and then, cause in a way, that's the way the developer can do less housing, but then, the people that buy all the housing are paying for affordable housing, but that doesn't happen right away. I'd rather get the units, so I don't know where other people feel on that, but I think we've been struggling and I've been struggling it, so.
And I was gonna make the same comment about the mitigation reduction. I mean, why keep it for anything at this point? We need the housing more than we need the money, in my mind, so I'd be all for getting rid of that. But I'd be curious to see what, since this is a Q&A, like Mike said, what your thoughts were.
I would only add that I fully agree with the dubiousness of the proposition of a RETA, but for very, very different reasons. And I do agree that abandoning the RETA would yield more affordable housing units, which I think has to be one of the questions that you guys ask yourselves on Bach. How are any of the 4 or 5 initiatives that we're going to discuss tonight going to promote the construction or the making available of affordable housing? And so if abandoning a RETA will help builders build more units, that seems to pass the test. And I don't necessarily need to go into my other reasons for opposing a RETA.
I would concur with that. I think that getting rid of the RETA on any property would result in more units. And while I also don't believe that we can build our way out of an affordable housing crisis or situation, I think that making it easier to build easier to build affordable units and harder to build free market units is something that should really be on the table.
Touche.
Yeah. Glenn, yeah.
I mean, I agree with everything everybody's saying. The one thing I think that we kind of miss in the affordable housing is how do we get people to go from a rental unit to actually being able to own a unit here in Basalt? Like, that's a really, really hard thing when we talk about affordability. It's one thing to be able to rent but never ever have equity. That's one thing I'd like to see, is how do we get that transitionary unit established or accomplished?
And I would definitely like to know, sorry, Mike, I was gonna say, I'd definitely like to know more about the Indeed program for that exact reason, as a possible option.
To that question, I'm not sure you can. I don't know if that's a realistic expectation from my point of view, given, the housing you're talking about, the incomes you're serving, it's a huge jump to make. And I don't think the town of Basalt has the wherewithal or the financial, the fiscal wherewithal to be able to help bridge that gap from rental to ownership, like maybe some other communities can. I mean, I think the gap is too wide, quite frankly, at this point and in the foreseeable future. I just, and I think that's something you have to lay on the table. Is that a realistic expectation for council, the community to have? Is to, you know, certainly rental is a viable option because we need to house a working community, the baristas and the grocery store workers, you know, the hourly wage workers. But will they be able to make that jump to ownership in a community where the median housing price is well over 700,000, 800,000 right now?
Mike and I go to the mats on the affordable housing for workforce and affordable housing for community. This is part of our ongoing discussions with Bach, but I also see that without being able to get equity through housing, we are not creating community housing, and we're not helping to stabilize and build our community. And that is a big concern for Bach at this moment.
But I'll push back, Kathy. I think, you know, with rental, and, you know, you make it affordable. You keep it at 30% or below somebody's gross income. You know, ideally and theoretically, they should be able to save and be able to save for ownership, whether it's here in Basalt or down Valley. But again, that I think we have to be honest. Is this a realistic expectation to have people in the community who are renting, maybe at who are making 50, 60% of their median income? Will they in 10 years be able to save enough to afford a median priced home in the town of Basalt? I'm not sure they can.
I don't think it's only people making 50 and 60% of their income. I mean, I fall into this bracket, so I just want to be clear that that's
Yeah,
not, we're not just talking about baristas and, you know, workforce housing. I mean, if the only thing that we can offer to our residents is for them to move on and move outside of this community, that means this council will never have anything on it but rich homeowners. No offense to the rest of you guys. Because, you know, that means I have to move down Valley.
You just gave me the biggest compliment. I've never been called rich before in my life. I'm really impressed.
Okay, but the median income home now
A lot of
at
communities.
over $700,000 though.
Yeah.
But you see my
So
point.
but
I'm
here's-
being a little
I do,
tongue in
but
cheek, but.
Here's part of the problem. Here's part of the problem. I think council has to recognize this, and this is a problem I see, not just in Basalt, but everywhere, industry-wide, in the housing industry, because we confuse the public and we create the very NIMBYism that we are trying to avoid because we confuse community, we confuse and conflate affordable housing with community housing with workforce housing. Well, what the hell does all of that mean? Because when you talk in a lot of different terms, you end up confusing your constituency and they don't understand what you're really talking about. So I think it's really important for the town of Basalt, as well as other communities, not just here in the valley, but around the state and around the country, to really define the terms they're using. Because when we have these conversations, and this is one of the frustrations I have being a member of Bach, and Kathy and I talk about this, and we've had this conversation in our committee, you know, what do we really mean by community housing? What do we mean by affordable housing? What do we mean by workforce housing? We need to clearly define what it is that the community is seeking to build and encourage the market to build. Otherwise, we're going to be chasing our tail for a lot of years and we'll never close the gap. And that's my concern.
Well, and I think that's where we got, you know, when we started talking, when I asked the question of the Soper's parcel, number 5, you know, I asked that question. It's like, oh, more rental. I just don't, we don't have a ladder that Glenn talked about, but we don't have a process to really discuss what types of housing we need. So we can't say, you know, in this location at Willits, we want for sale. We basically have left it up to the developer to come in and say, this is what we're proposing. I mean, because, you know, the Basalt Vista was for sale. But, you know, the most of the other affordable housing we're getting is rental. And I think, you know, yes, it would be great to define what we're looking at, but, you know, the reality is we need to have some type of ladder. We need to have some type of way to say, you know, in this location, it'd be great if we could do some for sale housing instead of just getting more rental. Or
And
do a study and say, we need more rental.
I think, Gary, that's part of our frustration as BOC, is that when you get an application like the latest rental application at Sopers Meadows, we don't have enough teeth or enough policy background or funding to say no. All we can say is, yes, this is per code, or we recommend some kind of mitigation. We don't have the teeth to really enforce or suggest anything else.
So I mean, is the solution changing the code? So that instead of it being rental, like maybe we change the percentages? And do we have a certain percentage that needs to be for sale and a certain percentage that needs to be rental? Now granted, there comes a whole nother deal, and Mike's probably familiar with this, but you're gonna have to have an authority manage that. So, I mean, it's a long road to hoe, but you can't throw your hands in the air and give up on it.
No.
Right.
But I think the for tonight, I mean, housing discussions are a bit like sand through your fingers. It's such a huge and sort of amorphous topic that I think we should perhaps focus on the 4 questions that were presented to us. I mean, save time for more discussion, which is always productive. But the 4 questions were the RETA, parking reduction, voluntary buy down, and amendment of SHEC. So I think it would be really constructive if we could give some feedback to staff about how we feel about those items. And then we move on and get into the more global topics. But so
Gary raised his fingers first, but then I have a.
But I was just saying, number 2 is kind of the conversation we're having right now.
yeah,
Because isn't, you know, the mitigation requirement updating portions of having housing gaps analysis, isn't that part of what we're talking about in this conversation?
well, I'd like to close on the first one. I mean, I think we.
I'm totally supportive of getting rid of the RETA.
Right.
Okay.
And just
Same.
saying,
Or offer RETA only as an add-on. So if a proponent for a project wants to come forward and do a voluntary RETA, fine, but we're not gonna offer reduction in unit count for affordable housing in exchange for a RETA. So that seems like is that the consensus?
I'm on board.
Yeah,
And
get rid of
almost
it for
wanna see
whatever
the-
reason you want, but.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I'd
you
almost
like
like
to do
yeah.
you wanna do a RETA, excellent, but there's no.
Right.
you
I'd
know.
almost like to see the percentage go up, but.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so that one, and
But-
then,
But I agree, again, Bill, sorry to jump in, but if our basic question is, how do we promote more affordable housing, both for rent or for sale? And what role should the government of Basalt be playing?
Yeah.
Doing away with the RETA has to promote affordability because it reduces the cost to the buyer or renter.
Yeah.
Full stop. Simple economics. The mitigation requirement, I'll leave that to the other experts, but the voluntary buy down is something I've been talking about since I learned about it from the guys in Edwards.
Yeah.
They're using public resources to incentivize the private sector to build either for rent or in Edwards' case, it was for purchase. If I'm not mistaken, somebody on BOC I'm sure knows far more than I do. But we are on the brink of floating an awfully significant amount of debt. And with that debt, we can pay for a lot of stuff. 6 million of it is supposed to go for housing. So if a portion or all of the 6 million went to voluntary buy downs to incentivize the private sector, that wouldn't be a bad
No, wouldn't be
public-private
bad at all.
partnership.
just the Vail Indeed was the model that they referenced in their memo, and,
But there are others.
I know there
So-
are others, I know, but in principle, you know, I think that at this point in history, and looking at, if you take a snapshot of the valley economy, the construction industry is overemployed right now in economist terms. So you want to build a new project, you have to bring new labor to the valley in order to accomplish it. There just isn't slack capacity out there. And so the question I would have is if our entire strategy is new construction, are we simply chasing our tail? Because we're bringing new labor force to the valley. They're going to compete for the housing stock that's here, and you end up, you know, you do the classic input-output analysis, and you find out that, you know, you actually, you know, exacerbate the problem. So, at any rate, I guess that's a long-winded way of saying the buy-down looks like a very economical and sensible way to go. So one person speaking, I'm not trying to monopolize the conversation, but I think that has got to be the low-hanging fruit here. It's got to be the most efficient way to get, roofs over people's heads that can afford to live here. I mean, that's just, it's
I would endorse it.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely would want to know more. That was my
Yeah,
point.
sure.
Yeah.
Bring us the information. We want to know.
Please.
Yeah.
Well,
And any other programs out there, to Bill's point, I mean, the Indeed program's not the only
Right.
one. There are probably other similar programs that maybe work in slightly different ways, and we would love to hear more about that in general.
And I think to Mike's point, before we forget about it, maybe you guys should, charge yourselves with going, what is community workforce housing? What is affordable housing, and what is workforce housing? Come up with a definition, and let's see if we can all agree with it.
mhm. But I guess the other question to Mike, I'll look to you, given your experience up with Aspen, but it certainly seems to me that some of the rules and regulations associated with APSHA's housing program have had some pretty perverse effects on property rights and owner rights for those deed-restricted owner-occupied houses. And I would be very concerned that we not repeat those errors that either restrict people's ability to have relatives come cohabit, if that's what they choose to do, or to put handcuffs on people, preventing them from taking other jobs because the employment requirements are very strict and draconian, or any of the other perverse effects that can happen from regulatory overreach.
Yeah, Bill, there's no doubt, a program like APSHA, as impressive as it is to have 3,100 units for a community of 7,000, it's a real testament to the commitment of Pickens County and Aspen to have built that and have mitigated the development of so many deed-restricted units. But part of the Achilles heel of a program like that is the ownership side of it. And so when I hear this conversation about should we get into ownership, do we encourage it? Well, just know what you're getting into, because there are a lot of unintended consequences that the founders in the 70s and the 80s of APSHA and the deed restricted program did not foresee. Everything, you name it, HOA reserves that are, capital reserves that are insufficient, the retirement time bomb, those things, and then just what's an appropriate appreciation rate, and then just also the risk of people manipulating or defrauding the system. So there's a lot of, unfortunately, there's some of that goes on with that a program like that with the ownership side. So you take on a lot more risk as a community and to the taxpayers long term when you get into the housing side of things, or when you get into the ownership side of things with deed restrictions versus encouraging rentals for a wider variety of area median income or income levels, household income levels.
All right, so you wanted to go to the parking?
Wait, did we skip
Yeah.
2?
I did, sorry.
We should
I
definitely,
skipped to 4.
we should definitely refresh the data. I mean, item 2,
Yeah.
Yeah,
kind
that
of
does-
see where
yeah.
we're at and
2
rebaseline
seemed
that.
like a
It's a no-brainer.
foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to comment on something James said regarding, and maybe I misunderstood, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I heard, and maybe it's just because this is such a hot topic, was that the point of refreshing the data was to see, specific to workforce in Basalt, what we need to house. But I don't think that is necessarily a realistic approach to a town that falls in a valley where everybody is mobily working up and down the valley. I mean, Glenn is a perfect example. His job's not in Basalt. So you're not gonna qualify for housing because you don't work in Basalt. You know what I mean? So I think we have to be really careful
And I
about
think,
how we read that data.
and I also think until you establish workforce housing, community housing, and affordable housing, and what do those criteria mean to us,
And attainable housing.
and attainable housing, how do you come up with,
They're all attainable.
how do you come up with data that's actually gonna be relevant?
So yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm all for refreshing, the data. I just want to be careful with when we analyze it, if we're thinking about it in terms of how we're positioned in a valley that's equally charged with needing affordable housing. I mean, we did a housing study, we being Connect One Design did a housing study for Snowmass, and I think, you know, we were able to say, okay, they have this much workforce and they need to house this much workforce because they're kind of like up in their own little zone where they're, you know, there's not as much movement like to different communities, whereas we're just smack in the middle. So I just want to be conscientious about that.
Yeah, I would like to reel back Mike's earlier comment a little bit. I wouldn't want to leave the impression that buy down is the only way to go. I think that, you know, with our bond proceeds, you know, if there's low-hanging fruit and we can be opportunistic in their land, I think we're on the right track there, finding land. But I just think, you know, we need a mixed bag of tricks here. We can't, you know, rely exclusively on new construction, so.
But that's buy down by
Mayor, if I
another
may,
name.
precisely, that's, I think the board, I can speak with the board in this, because with the conversation we had, it's just one arrow in the quiver. It's not a silver bullet, we all recognize that, the buy down. There's a lot of good things that can come of it. However, I heard somebody use the term, is it an efficient way to use the dollars that the voters gave the community for affordable workforce housing? That's a question that remains unanswered in my opinion, because, for example, if it depends on how much you're willing to spend on the buy down, and is that the most effective and efficient use of those dollars on a per capita, per household basis? And I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, fair enough.
But it also depends how we define buy down. I mean, it could be literally participating in the equity structure or in the financing
No, that's a
structure.
good point.
Or it could be buying land. Or in the case of Basalt Vista, God knows there was a very torturous conversation about whether to waive the water hookup fees that finally we surmounted, and for $40,000 that became Basalt's contribution. Well, waiving impact fees as a for instance is another opportunity for us to effectively reduce the costs to developers for either rental or owner-occupied housing. Either way, we're simply reducing the cost and thereby incentivizing the developer. So it doesn't matter where it goes, it's all more or less fungible at some point.
I would also like to say too, you know, I know the valley's transitory, but we do have a lot of people that work in Basalt. We have the police department, we have the fire department, we have all our teachers. And I think we definitely need to make a commitment to the people that keep the town running, especially the, you know, Boyd staff and all of those. Like, how many total do we have of the core of Basalt? And I know they struggle. I mean, everyone's struggling on this, but I would like to focus on some of those areas too, to make sure we're helping them.
And that's one thing I think about in the transitionary phase is it's like, if you have an employee that's worked for this town for 25 years, by God, they deserve to own a house here and not rent. I know that seems like far-fetched, but it's where I'm at.
But I guess the other observation is, I mean, while we're scratching our heads with Bach and the town of Basalt, again, Glenn, as we just noted, you don't work in Basalt, but you live in Basalt. You are not the only one who's living somewhere other than where you work. And so if we're not trying to solve this problem with everybody up and down the valley and then down the I-70 corridor, frankly, I think we're spinning our wheels, which is where, again, the effort to promote regional dialogue and regionalism as a source of solutions has got to be something that we place lots more emphasis on, either through Bach or through our representative Elise on the
Thursday.
the regional efforts that's being spearheaded by Dave Myler.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe you could comment on that. There seemed to be, you know, there was an article in the paper this week, and there seemed to be a couple different regional efforts now launched. I mean, I think we've participated pretty actively with the Dave Myler initiative.
Ponied up a lot of cash for that.
Yeah, and then there's another that was, so I don't know, the staff, I think, has been following this, so maybe you could just brief us quickly on what role we've played in that and make sure that we're doing our part from the Basalt end of things.
Sure, yeah. Well, we have been participating from the inception on the regional housing conversation that Dave Myler had put together, and James has been attending those meetings. Elise is the representative for the town, and it was on pause for a couple years because of COVID. So that's ramping back up, and there seemed to be buy-in from the regional entities to want to participate in that. So I think that is something that could gain traction. It could find itself, moving toward some kind of structure to do management and oversight of building affordable housing, perhaps maintaining affordable housing. I think it's going to take its twists and turns as people figure that out. And then I've been participating with the town managers in the valley on the regional roadmap, and that is something that DOLA put out as part of their road to recovery, stemming from the COVID pandemic. And so we had gotten together, initially scoping Aspen to Parachute, then we'd gotten together with our Eagle Valley folks as well, and ultimately settled on an Aspen to Glenwood scope on it. It just became too unwieldy to try to wrangle all of those governments and find interest, ultimately in agreement on a certain topic. So that topic really revolves around workforce resiliency, so maintaining our workforce, and that comes with housing as one of them, but also social services and equity in those, the ability to move up over time in your job and have that sort of upward mobility. And as governments, some of those social services and things, that we don't do those well. That's not what we're focused on. But something like housing is something that we're all versed in and have been doing for a long time. So that's probably something we focus on. And with that, after we finish this process, it could be followed with money. So we'd be able to potentially leverage funds through the state and federal government, and these would be some of the recovery dollars that were out there. And then there is another effort afoot that the Aspen Institute is apparently involved in, and that's like a 3-day forum. I think it's coming together. I don't know that it's highly organized at this point in time, but we had spoken with the person that's leading that and asked them to get with Dave Myler and talk to him, because we didn't want too many efforts going in different directions, and it kind of seemed like you're going to confuse the public. So we wanted to avoid that. So we probably won't take as much of a participation role in that. It's a different scope as well. But I think with everything that we have going on, really kind of focusing our efforts with the two that I highlighted, being the roadmap, and then of course Dave Myler's, I think, is going to give us the most bang for our buck and be able to get results from funding ultimately, and then establishing partnerships. And we have regular contact and updates on where we are. And I think just last week I had some good conversations with regional managers of trying to leverage partnerships. And I think if we're able to find land, for example, I mean that's really the I think toughest part for all of the towns. We've talked to Breckenridge, we've talked to Telluride, we've talked to Vail, Aspen. Get land is what they say. They've been at this for much longer than we have, and if we're able to do that, then you can kind of figure out, great, what partners do you bring in? What type of properties do you want to build, rental versus ownership, and then what income classes are you looking at too? So I think we're all moving in the right direction here. It's just a matter of kind of bringing those resources to bear, and I think Basalt Vista is a great example of those partnerships. So.
Yeah, that's good update. Thank you. Yeah, and I don't think I think when you say we're moving in the right direction, I think it's important to take stock of what we've done in the last 36 months. I think we've added 173 units of deed restricted and rent managed controlled affordable housing to Basalt. It's pretty stunning. I mean, it seems like it's small relative to the magnitude of the problem, but I think we should take some pride in having completed that step. A lot long way to go here, though, obviously. You know,
For gosh sake, I mean, do we have a member of Bach sitting on the, Mike, or the Dave Myler Commission, Committee, whatever it's called?
don't know.
We don't. We have a council representative, Elise, who was assigned here recently.
Would it be a good
Well, I was
idea?
assigned when I started. I just started attending recently.
Well, just restarted, yeah. And staff has been attending as well.
I mean, if there's no
That's
objection,
good.
why wouldn't
Yeah,
why wouldn't we have a Bach representative as well?
I think
I
it
mean-
just matters on, I think good idea, it just matters on how many members they're willing to have that are partaking in it. And
They can be non-voting observers.
Check it out anyway.
If, you know, don't let me volunteer you guys for something you don't want to be on, but if this is going to be the framework for regional discussion, I think, again, it would be, since you guys are the experts on affordable housing, it would make sense to have one of you guys on it.
Well, the other thing I wanted to remind council about is that we have time focused on the January 11th meeting, and Habitat for Humanity is going to be here. I think we're going to have a full-throated conversation about rental versus ownership in the valley and what the town's role can be to incentivize affordable housing ventures. So we're going to be at this, I think, for a while. I would just like to, you know, really strapped for time here, but I would just like to make sure the Bach team knows that, you know, we really will look to staff to bring back to us amendments to deal with RETA parking reductions so that it's more sensible and affordable. We will look at a mix of options with voluntary buy down and new construction, and the housing guidelines is going to be ongoing like forever, but
Do we need for number 2 to be complete, though, before we make a decision on number 3?
is number 2 parking reductions, or what is,
No, so number 2 was the reanalysis of our needs.
Oh, that, right.
So my thought process here was like, do we know for sure that we need 3 bedrooms before we go ahead and
No, that's
say
an
that
excellent
to
point.
move forward on 3-bedroom parking
Yeah.
issues?
Yeah,
I think we
I'm
need
just-
an analysis.
yeah,
Let's give it a
obviously, yeah,
refresh, let's
that's
get
a
more
big,
information, it's only gonna help us make decisions.
yeah. The only thing I would say, having observed this over a long period of time in the valley, is that these analysis that come back and say, okay, we're 5,300 units short. It's like, okay, well, these are just imponderable. They're just, you know, insurmountable, kind of. They're not action oriented. They're just like point out the magnitude of how far behind we
Just
are.
a crushing weight on
Yeah,
you.
that's not going to be helpful. I think what Elise just outlined is a lot more helpful to know what the right, you know, what the target market is, what the right mix is, and, you know, what the split is between rental and ownership and buy down versus new construction. That would get us a long way towards giving us some compass and a heading on where we go in the future on this program.
And I would love if Bach had time, as we all have so much extra time, but to think about and look at what other policy levers are out there. I mean, some of the other communities are doing things like we were actually gonna ask you, but I think we've run out of time, what your opinion on the short-term rental moratorium, and I know Crested Butte was talking about no empty second homes and things like that, so I would love to hear your opinions about that maybe the next time we meet.
Okay, so, thanks, guys. We have 12 minutes before our regular meeting. We're gonna try to get a quick bite to eat here, so unless there are more discussion or items, I would thank Brock and ask you guys to mark January 11th on your calendar. We're gonna get, you know, we're gonna spend a little more time on the 11th. And I think we're gonna have the Habitat for Humanity folks here and maybe some other partners in the valley that are gonna come talk to us, so, okay.
And I think I saw that was a 4 o'clock potentially in the back of the packet,
Mhm.
Yeah,
just for planning purposes, so.
Yeah.
to do the site walkthrough. Yeah.
Yeah.
And thanks, Bach.
Yes,
Thank you,
thank you
guys.
very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bach. Bach is a, Johann. Great, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, evening. Welcome to the December 14th edition of the Town of Basalt Town Council meeting. So we just completed a good work session with BAC, Basalt Area Community Housing, and we got some really good direction there. And so we will proceed with the regular agenda. Pam, if you'd be so kind as to call the roll.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Gary Tenenbaum,
Here.
Bill Infante,
Here.
Glenn Drummond,
Here.
David Knight,
Here.
Elise Hoddle,
Present.
Ryan Slack,
Here.
and Mayor Kane.
Here.
Thank you. The A-team is present.
Thank you very much. So next order of business, we have 2 items on our consent agenda, actually 3 items on our consent agenda. Minutes from November 23rd, 2021, continuation of a public hearing till January 11th, and continuation of another public hearing till January 11th. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. No objections, so consent agenda is passed. At this point in the meeting, we will open the floor to public comment, both in person and virtually through our electronic media. So anyone that would like to address the council, please be aware and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Address your comments to the mayor, and be aware that we will take no action on comments, but items can be referred to our town staff for action. So anyone that would like to address council, Susan, do you want to explain ground rules for calling in?
Sure. The best way, if you're watching remotely on Grassroots and you would like to make a comment during public comment, is the first page in the agenda center on the town's website has a little link that you can simply click the link, and then Pam can enter you into the meeting. Another way is to telephone 1-346-248-7799, and then when prompted, the webinar ID is 899-8151-6700. And then if you do have a problem, just text 970-379-1514. And I don't believe currently on TV or on our Zoom meeting that we have anybody that wants to speak for public comment, unless Doug McDonald, who is a BAC member, also would like to make a comment during public comment. Everyone else that's up there on the screen is someone from another agenda item. So, Doug, could you raise your hand if you wanted to speak during public comment?
Okay.
So I think it's just people here in the audience.
Okay. Anyone like to address council, please feel free to come on up to the podium and make your comments. Okay. Oh. Diana?
Hello, Mayor and everyone. I just wanted to let you know that for the next few months, I'm going to be virtual. I'll be in Arizona, and I will be attending the meetings, but you probably won't see me. So just want to let you know, that's why I'm disappearing, but I will be watching.
Will you refrain from reciting the temperature and and where exactly you
I promise
are?
not to share any good news with you.
Okay. Thank you, Diana. So, Chris, do you want to address council?
Please.
Come on up.
Do I need to tell you who I am?
Yes, you do. You have to say
Chris
your name,
Lentz.
address,
I live at
rank, serial
75
number.
River Oaks Lane, near Valley Lumber. I've spoke before you folks recently 2 times. I'm here at the urging of my attorney to revisit with you and give you a little insight into what my plans are.
Okay.
First thing that I'd like to do is tell you the three of the reasons that I want to talk with you folks. One is my environmental concerns about the river situation in my neighborhood, which I think you're pretty aware of from those last conversations, and the loss of wildlife habitat pursuing from that. The second reason that I'm here is I'm a homeowner there, and there's a private easement along the river through our subdivision that's deeded and platted for the use of all homeowners and their guests, present and future, for remain natural for recreational uses. And that amenity to our subdivision is being encroached by a few of the homeowners for their personal use. And it's shutting the rest of us, many of the rest of us, out of the use of that. And the third thing is that precipitates a loss to property value of my property. If I can no longer use that or sell that to a future owner, I feel like I'm being damaged in a financial way. So those are three of the reasons that I'd like to get settled by you folks making an enforcement of existing town ordinances that relate to that area. A few of you may know Leroy Durox. He's a pretty known person in the town. He's a two-term past mayor of the town, and when I have a question about something that relates to government, I confer with Leroy. So Leroy told me that one of the jobs of a city council is to develop a policy on a specific issue from time to time, and then pass that policy on to the staff in the way that they would like to see that handled. So even though I've been told by the mayor that I'm preaching to the wrong group, my attorney doesn't think so. Okay, I hope that this council will do that and develop a policy about how they want to see this handled, not only in my situation, but future situations, and pass that on to the staff and ask them to move forward in that way. I hope that you will rule in favor or make policy in favor of removing the violations to the ESA municipal ordinance and preserve the riverfront and the riparian area. That's what I would like to see happen. I did a little homework about exactly how much river lies within the town of Basalt, and the answer's 2.9 miles. That's how much river that this council and this town has stewardship of. The stretch of river from basically Roaring Fork Conservancy up to Highway 82 on Two Rivers Road is governed by Eagle County. And it's actually one of the more natural, unadulterated areas of our river. Of the 2.9 miles that still exist in the town of Basalt, well over 2 miles of those have already been developed for residential and commercial use. So that leaves us with less than a mile of river to maintain in its natural original state. A quarter of a mile of that lies within my subdivision.
We're almost 4 minutes, so I'll just ask you to move along.
Okay, I'm trying. Okay, so please don't give away another quarter mile of it. That's all I'm asking of you. As far as my attorney's involved, he's developing a suit to help persuade the town of Basalt to enforce their ordinances and remove the structures and so on that are incorrectly placed in that easement and preserve it in a natural state. He'll be providing you with what he calls a demand letter in the next few weeks to, as he claims, get full attention to this issue. And the last thing that I'll give you more information about how that's going to happen at the next meeting or when he gives you that letter. He wants to hold off till after the first of the year, only because he knows the holidays are hectic and it won't help.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Okay, the last thing I want to say.
Your time is, you can't prosecute an item like this under public comment. You're going to have to get time on an agenda or work with staff. So we're now at almost 5 minutes. We have a 3-minute limit, so we've been pretty courteous. So I really
agree. Thank
appreciate
you.
if you could wrap it up.
I'll talk with you next time.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address council? All right, thank you. That concludes the public comment period for tonight. We will then turn to mayor and council comments. So floor is open for any counselor that would like to update council on any reports or comments. I'll mention a few things. I'd like to thank the town staff for doing an excellent job with our tree lighting. And we started on November 28th with the menorah lighting out at Willits, well attended, really nice event. And the staff did a great job organizing the lighting, and the setting was just perfect. Same thing for the Willits tree lighting on December 3rd, and this past Friday night out here it was 15 degrees, so you know the crowds were kept down a little bit. So, but it was really great, and I really thank the staff, and I am very pleased that we had such successful turnout and support. Tonight we had a ribbon cutting for the brand new free range kitchen, so pretty remarkable that we started, 6 months ago, and I thought we would see the free range kitchen next summer, but they're open for business, and it's pretty spectacular that they were able to bring that building together so quickly. So work on the River Park is really proceeding according to schedule, and maybe way ahead of schedule, so looks great over there. So that's it. There's an important update. We had our RAFTA board meeting last Thursday, and our request for grant assistance from RAFTA for our microtransit pilot program was approved. So, Brian, maybe under your report you can update us on where we are, but we're going to have that baby up and operating this winter season. So that's all good news. So, any other comments? All right.
I have one quick
Yeah.
comment. Yesterday I attended the Eagle County Climate Action Collaborative meeting, and we actually have decided now to go in a different direction than I stated last time I spoke about it, which is instead of the anti-idling, they're looking at maybe a broader topic of beneficial electrification. And then we would look at like individual initiatives that fall underneath that sort of umbrella category. So as a lead-in, I just wanted to say that I'm guessing Sarah's comments, 6B on the rating the green code amendments will actually be one of those items that the communities in Eagle County are all working on together. And the other thing I wanted to say about that is we have lost the lovely coordinator of that group who works for Walking Mountain Science Center, so that position will get posted shortly in case any wonderful candidates are out there and interested.
Thanks, Elise. So with no further comments, we'll turn to the manager's report.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple updates. So to continue on the downtowner, which is going to be known as Basalt Connect. That should get rolled out in January. Right now, we're working on the professional services agreement with Downtowner. We're working on the decals and such that will go on the 2 vans that were purchased. We are starting discussions with RAFTA to do the grant agreement with them, and Downtowner is going to be posting for hiring the drivers for that. So there's kind of lots to do behind the scenes, but it's definitely moving forward, and hoping for a mid-January start on that. And we'll, utilize our local media resources. The chamber spoke with Chris today about really trying to get the word out about that, and I think that's going to be an important component to that. And it will be on demand, and then really accessed through a downloadable app. That's going to be the preferred way to get that. You can also make a phone call. So at any rate, that is progressing, and all good news there. In the back of your packet is information about the annual grants. Those are the council discretionary grants. So our subcommittee did meet made those recommendations, and we're just putting it back in the back of the packet for information. That's how we've done that over the last several years. We are looking at funding a portion of those with our tobacco tax. Staff reviewed those ones that were recommended for tobacco tax, and we feel that that falls in line with the intent of that language, and spoke with Jeff about that as well. So we're able to do a little extra this year, so about $30,000 from discretionary and $30,000 from the tobacco tax. So we did a pretty good job of spending that tobacco tax this year with our programs, and we'll be looking forward to next year and possibly some other programs to be able to support. The other thing that we did, I was in the paper today, I'm sure many of you saw it, our S&P rating was very successful. The report that they turned in was very favorable to the town, and we got a AA stable rating. So on Thursday, is it Thursday? Not tomorrow. Thursday, the bonds are going to be. Is it tomorrow?
It is tomorrow,
Thanks.
yeah.
Those will be sold, so it looks like we're well on our way with that. So all good news.
Nice.
The last thing I have is it is our intent, as I'm sure you're understanding, that the last meeting of December would be canceled, and that was going to be December 28th. That's been custom to cancel that last meeting. So, unless somebody really wants to
I
have
think
it.
Ryan's opposing it.
I'll be here.
I'll be here.
Yeah.
Well, that's disappointing, but I guess we'll power on.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Oh,
Thank you.
great, thanks. Well, congratulations on the bond rating. That's impressive work. And then due in no small measure to fiscal management and accounting and controls that are in place. And I think we have a lot to thank Christie for that. So good work on that one. So we then now turn to presentations. So the first order of business is Basalt Forward 2030 project update.
So that's me again.
Yeah.
And we do have Phil Vaughn on the line as well. Hello, Phil. Phil wasn't able to attend in person as he's out of town for work commitments. But he's here to answer questions should any come up that would fall within his expertise. So, hi, Phil.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to attend via Zoom.
So the purpose of doing this presentation, we just wanted to make sure council's up to speed with what staff has been working on so far with the Basalt Forward 2030 projects. There has been a lot of activity going on behind the scenes and a lot of hard work from staff to get this kicked off in earnest. So the first topic we'll cover are the green initiatives. If I can get on the right page here. So as you recall, we set aside approximately $2 million of the total. Plus, we'd be looking for other grants and other partners with this. But the green team and staff are working to determine the best path forward ultimately with this. And we'll need to come back with those ideas to council, but definitely doing a lot of that background work right now. The idea as moving forward on a photovoltaic and a battery backup project. We've been working with Holy Cross and the school district on this for several months, and the Holy Cross has a program that actually allows for construction of up to a 0.5 megawatt solar photovoltaic system. And then the battery backup is a new program that they're rolling out. It started with residential and then is beginning into the commercial sphere. So the idea there is to build resiliency into the grid, and it allows for not only Holy Cross to cycle the energy that's stored in that battery during peak hours, but then it also adds resiliency to the location where the solar is in case of a power outage. So a pretty good deal there. We started working on this back in August, trying to determine the goals for the project, and have since put out an RFP. So that's going to be due here in just a few days, and that would be, the respondents to that would be solar companies that could have expertise to advise us on the locations that we identified as potential locations for solar, and would be able to advise on which would give us the most bang for our buck, ultimately in energy production. So that should be forthcoming in the next few months as they dig in there. And then a second priority on those green initiatives, kind of dovetails with what we'll hear from Sarah's update here, is really looking at our affordable housing and our town facilities. So making sure that we're adding photovoltaic to any project that we do, and other energy saving measures, as well as looking for that resilience piece in battery backup. So I think we've got a pretty good program. It needs to develop a little bit further, but that's sort of the general update on where we were and where we are. And we do have the school district coming along with us on that project as well. So before I move on to the next, any questions on that one? Okay. The next here, the Midland Avenue Streetscape Project. So this is the biggest budget line item that we have. It's estimated currently at $11.5 million. We were carving out about $9 million of the proceeds from the Basalt Forward 2030 money. And the other $2.5 million, we'll be looking to target grants as well as other funding sources that we've discussed in the past. And I'll talk a little bit about our strategy on the grants here in a few minutes. But right now, what's underway, we've got some existing conditions mapping occurring, so SGM is helping us with that. That's a pretty big project, and will be a really useful tool for ultimately a designer on that, to understand the parameters that they're going to need to work within, sort of the extent of our right-of-way or easements in that area. And then we also are doing a lot of title work. So I think it's over 50 properties that we're getting title work completed on.
That could be interesting.
Yes, because this is the oldest area of town, so we just want to be certain as we're moving forward where we are with again the extent of the right-of-way easements and other issues that might exist out there. And then moving forward here, in January, it's our intent to put out an RFP, a request for proposals for design team. And we've been doing a lot of internal discussions with the assistance of Phil here on trying to assemble a design team that would include both engineering services as well as design, likely from a landscape architecture firm. And we'll talk a bit more about that approach here. And then also a second RFP would go out in January, and this would be for a construction manager general contractor. So this approach is called CMGC, and the next slide I'll be able to talk about that. And this is really where we're leaning on Phil for his expertise, and have had a lot of discussions and really going into this confidently that this would be the best way for us to proceed, and want to make that recommendation to council. So timeline-wise, after we get these folks on, we're thinking the public outreach portion of this would start this spring, and it would end toward the end of 2022, early 2023. It'll take us about a year to get all of that completed, and then we'd be looking at construction over the year's building season of 2023 and 2024. And that's been explained a few different times, but the idea there is to get the deep utilities in the first year, and then do sort of the street level improvements on the second year. We were hoping to limit disruption to that area as much as possible, with one strategy being shutting down construction during the busiest month of the year, which would be July most likely. And so that, kind of carries it into the next year potentially. So, but we think that could be a good way to address that disruption. So that CMGC, or the construction manager, general contractor, is an approach that Phil's used quite a bit. It's been used in the valley, but really what it does is brings on that construction company early in the process, so that they can have input into the design phase and make comment on the constructability of a given design, because that way you kind of have a team approach versus designing something that would be harder or more expensive to build. And with that, they're able to prepare construction costs for us. So we're really kind of keeping up with that along the way. And then ultimately what we would get from them is a guaranteed maximum price proposal. So we think that this is a good way for us to proceed and really have a handle on what the costs would be going into the construction phase of this. And that would come to us about a year from now, in February of 2023, approximately. So before I go on to the next, I did just want to see if there were any questions on that approach, and Phil might help us out with any technical piece to that. Yes, David?
The public outreach, does that include kind of expectation settings and that kind of motion, just with all the changes going on, and what to that end will continue in the construction seasons in 23 and 24, because people have short memories sometimes, but yet there'll be a lot going on.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think, of course, we'll have to look at those proposals and see what, there are different approaches to that public outreach piece, but I think communicating that, it is going to be disruptive, so there's that understanding. It is a, central business district, but ultimately, trying to mitigate for that as best we can, but, kind of keeping our sights set on that finished product, that it's really going to enhance the pedestrian experience, it'll really enhance, I guess, better bike parking. We know that that's an issue down there. And how are we going to deal with parking, like the deliveries and those kind of things that occur in the center lane now? And just given the tight area, we don't live in a gridded town, and so we are somewhat limited with this modified grid that we have for where parking can go and that kind of thing. But looking to maximize that the best we can. And then I think just making sure that we're communicating about the construction schedule and that kind of thing. So, and as with any design process, I don't think we go in with the expectation of 100% support on it. I think we really want to get as much buy-in as we can, and just given the time frame, we're really going to want to be pretty aggressive about the kind of sticking to that so we can hit those building seasons. But get as much buy-in and ultimately a really good design out of it.
Thanks.
When would the evaluation of deep utilities take place? I think Phil was talking about using a hydro excavation or some less impactful technique for potholing and getting a look at what we have in the ground there. When would that roll out relative to the design process? Would that information be available to the design team?
Yeah, I think, Phil, do you mind updating on that piece? Did you hear that?
I certainly did, yes. Thank you, Mayor, for the question. And what we are in the process of right now is SGM's preparing the existing condition surveying. As Ryan had mentioned a couple of minutes ago, we're utilizing the title work as well for that to prepare that existing conditions mapping. So we'll note any encumbrances and easements that need to be noted. And then as well, we also have provided, SGM will be providing private locates for all of our underground utilities, and they will be as well surveying that in. Mayor, we chose not to move forward with hydro excavation this fall in the fact that we did not want to go out and disturb asphalt paving or country, prior to winter and have those areas open and have that as open Class 6 gravel. So that's why we opted to hold on any hydro excavation until the spring. And so that information will not be available to designers until the spring, but we do feel comfortable with this approach, that we'll be getting the information that we need, and then we can verify necessary inverts and the like in the spring. Catherine and Susan and I did walk the site with SGM 2 weeks ago and walked through the details on what we wanted for existing utilities, went through extensive discussions about sanitary sewer, dipping those sanitary sewer manholes and verifying our inverts and other areas of concern throughout the length of the project. So I feel we're in a good spot and exactly where we need to be now, again, withholding on hydro excavation activity until spring 2022.
That sounds like a good plan to minimize it, do it in the off-season so we're not impacting our businesses during the, middle tourism season. So, great, thanks.
Any questions about the CMGC approach or guaranteed maximum price?
I think it's great.
Yeah. Great. And then lastly, and we just got done talking about this, was the affordable housing approach. And we had set aside approximately $6 million for that, and certainly looking to leverage that money through partnerships and other grants. Bach is scheduled, we mentioned that earlier tonight, to do a work session with the town staff and council on the 13th of January. So just, wanting to, kind of dive deeper into sort of our philosophical approach to it and what council is going to feel comfortable with moving forward. And just as a reminder, we did approve a contract with Ted Borschelt with Sotheby's, and that happened in November. Since that time, he has been out and has made contact with several property owners for parcels of land that may be for sale, or parcels of land that were identified that may be suitable for affordable housing. And so we're making those contacts now, and maybe be able to bring something back to council in the not too distant future. Let's see, I guess that's, and then I mentioned that in tomorrow, I think tomorrow or the next day, and then in January, we will be talking with CHAFA, so the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, and that's a state authority that not only has some finance tools. So, for example, the Roaring Fork Apartments utilized them for some of the financing for that project, but they also have a really good handle on approaches to affordable housing and the different ones that exist out there. So we thought we'd bring them in. Habitat for Humanity wanted to talk a little bit about the rental versus home ownership approach to the affordable housing, and then also talking to some different towns to see if we might get a town spokesperson that has been involved with this. So as I mentioned earlier, town of Telluride, town of Breckenridge, town of Avon, Vale, they've just been at this for a little bit longer, and so kind of hearing from them what their experiences and sort of preferred methods might be could be something interesting to hear. Let's see, ultimately we would be looking for, I'm on the wrong page, sorry. One of the other approaches that we'd also look at besides land purchase, and something that we talked about early on, was buying down deed restrictions. So that might be something that we're able to do, and as a developer is developing a property. So right now those seem to be more focused on rental than on purchase, but definitely something that's still out there, and something that Ted could also help us with. So more to come on that. And then to get back to the grant writer piece, as we've mentioned before, looking to leverage this money, there are grants out there. There's grants for Main Street. There will be grants for affordable housing coming up. We believe that there will be grants potentially for energy reducing initiatives, energy saving initiatives, and so we just want to explore all of those. And so we have a request for proposals out for a grant writer right now, and we should be getting those back at the beginning of January. And really we'll have them focus initially on the Midland Avenue streetscape project, as that one has an identified deficit in it, and we have we're just wanting to be aggressive with getting after those grant possibilities. So and then as far as funding that, we think that we'd be able to do that through additional sales tax in 2022, but we think it'll definitely be money well spent on that. So that's where we are with these.
Ryan, who makes up the affordable housing team, just out of curiosity? Not individuals, but like what groups? Is that Bach and staff, or?
As far as
What says like next team meeting, January 6th? I'm just curious, who's the team?
Right now, so that team that we've got this internal team of staff and then Ted as far as identifying those properties. But Bach, because they're that resource, that community resource, the idea is to bring them along once we have some pieces of property identified, so that we they might help us kind of make a recommendation ultimately to council on what's the most logical piece to pursue, and then also want them to weigh in on kind of if we do purchase property, what comes next? How do we want to leverage partnerships? What do we want to focus on as far as product? Because if I don't envision the town building the product, so it may come with an additional request for proposals for a developer that could come in and help us to build those units ultimately. So the intent is to kind of starting with staff, getting Bach, and then bringing council into the conversation as well. So that's the progression.
I definitely agree with Elise that it would be good to know who the prospective partners are before we start buying land. But I'm curious about the intergovernmental component of this. How are we handling outreach to Eagle, Pitkin, school districts, other jurisdictions?
Staff is doing that. So we've been, as I mentioned earlier, we have ongoing conversations about this at the town manager level. It may be that those deals with partners aren't inked when we go purchase land, and if that's the direction the council decides to go, because I think you need that land first, and then you go through a process of what's best suited for that property, and who does that which partners make sense for it, I guess. But every single town or jurisdiction is very interested in participating with us on this, and so.
At what point do we reach out to other elected officials who have an interest in this too?
Well, I think ultimately the staffs are really the ones that are going to be working on it. I mean, if there's I guess the elected officials aren't the ones that are negotiating the deal or putting together the proposal, but then I think perhaps sort of like we did with Basalt Vista, once the sort of a scheme was developed, then I think the elected officials weighed in on it and tried to figure out, all right, well, yeah, do we want to, I guess, address our needs with this product, or how much money are we ultimately going to want to put in? So it's still, I guess, just at a staff level at this point.
Okay. Bill, I'd suggest that maybe, frankly, some outreach to Eagle County commissioners and to Pitkin County commissioners would be worthwhile, since they, like we, are ultimately the decision makers, and
Yeah.
getting caught flat-footed, frankly, with a proposal that we've got a rubber stamp is kind of uncool.
Yeah, and I don't think that's what staff is suggesting. So, I mean, I don't think that we try to bring something to council with 3 different governments involved and hope that you rubber stamp it. So, you know, I think that's why we're intending on having, you know, the discussion on January and really trying to vet this. But it's at a stage right now where I think we just need to figure out our approach and sort of what this council wants to do as far as approaching affordable housing. So
We might want to be a part of that, though, is the only point.
Yeah. I think we will be. I think that'll be up to our next Senate about the time we get through the process. Any other questions for Ryan on the 2030 update? Thanks. Looks like we're making pretty good headway. So appreciate the efforts. A lot of exciting stuff to look forward to. Next order of business tonight is item 6B on our agenda. It's an update from our subcommittee writing our green code amendments. So I think Sarah is handling
Yeah, so
it.
Sarah, Amanda, and Phi, you want to come?
Just
on?
maybe, since I'm just gonna kind of do an intro, maybe I'll move off, and let Fine.
Why don't you stand here at the mic and let Phi and Amanda sit down? And just a rule number 1, we have a mic. You guys are sharing a mic, so if you could share between you, I think you guys know the drill. Get it about 4 inches from your face when you talk.
All right, well, thank you, council. This is a work session with the Green Code Committee. The Green Code Committee is a subcommittee of the Basalt Green Team. And you last saw the committee in August, where we were working on reviewing the town's current codes and practices and researching what other communities are doing, all with the intent of moving the town on the path to net zero development and helping the town really meet its carbon reduction goals. So we have here today Amanda Poindexter and Phi Fowlerman. They're going to be presenting some information. Phi will be taking you through what other communities are doing and how what we're proposing is really in line with a larger regional goal. And Amanda will be getting into more of the details of what we are really proposing. The intent of the committee is to bring back an ordinance for council's consideration for first reading on January 11th. We have also proposing 3 informational sessions that we've done this in the past when we've rolled out some changes to our sustainable building regulations in order to get the building community just informed and on board and to field any questions up front. So those are tentatively set for early and mid January. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Phi to give you some information on what the committee is proposing at this time.
And Sarah, maybe you just remind everyone who sits on the committee and point
Sure.
out that Mitch Miller, the building official, is watching, and Holy Cross also.
And yes, I was going
Sure.
to mention that Mary Weiner, who is with Holy Cross, she is a supporter, Holy Cross is a supporter of the Green Team, and so she is on the call today. I didn't realize that Mitch Miller, he is on the committee. He is the building official, of course. We have Catherine in the audience here, our town engineer. And who else do we have on here besides myself and Susan? Jeff Dickinson, who's the owner of Biospaces Inc., and Amanda and Phi. And I think that's everyone.
No.
All right, take it away, Phi. Thank you.
Well, thanks, everyone. First, I just want to thank all of you, the town of Basalt, for, it's very clear you guys take your climate action goals very seriously. And the recommendations that are being put forth tonight by this group really just reflect that. And it's great that you've, given your staff the direction to put forth these recommendations that are so strongly support your climate action goals and your declaration of the climate emergency. So it's great to see that. And it's also very much in line with what we're seeing throughout this valley, pretty much from Carbondale to Aspen. All of our communities are looking at adopting some fairly aggressive goals in this coming year. Basalt really leading the way with your early adoption or your early updating of your sustainable building requirements. Carbondale recently updated their commercial sustainable building requirements to something very similar to what Basalt is proposing, to what your staff is proposing. Probably not quite as aggressive, but I suspect in the next year when they look at adopting the 2021 codes, they will, again, increase their codes, be something probably equal to what Basalt is doing. And then all of the jurisdictions, Aspen, Pitkin, and Snowmass are also all looking at adopting similar codes in the next year, in line with the core platform which we've put forward, as well as the Basalt, which you have developed, which is very similar. And interestingly, it's also very much in line with what Eagle Valley, I was actually on a call today with the Eagle Valley Collaborative and talking about electrification, and I mentioned what Basalt is putting forth tonight, and they're very interested, and I won't be surprised if what you adopt becomes very much their template for what happens with the Eagle County communities on the other side of the hill there, so that's exciting. What you're also putting forth is, it's also very much in line with meeting your climate action goals. I mean, you have some very aggressive climate action goals, and the recommendations, some of the key recommendations that are being put forth, electrification, energy efficiency, renewable energy, are all extremely important to being able to reach those goals. We know that buildings are probably the biggest contributor to your greenhouse gas emissions. I think Basalt's was 62% of your emissions inventory for 2017 were buildings. Granted, the big lift is going to be existing buildings, and I think we all know that. But right now, we have an opportunity to address our new buildings between this update of your building regulations, as well as with the upcoming code adoptions. And we all know new buildings become existing buildings as soon as they're finished. So getting these right and making these changes early, I think, is a really a key piece that I commend you guys on looking at right now. So I think a couple of key recommendations that Amanda's going to talk about are electrification, again, in line with your conversation with Eagle. You'll see a lot of the bigger recommendations are around electrifying the existing buildings and requirements for electrifying new buildings, and then any existing buildings that want to renovate also having some electrification requirements, that they start making those moves so that we can get all of our building systems on a cleaner energy grid, which no matter what we do, obviously fossil fuels, we can't eliminate the carbon emissions, but we can do that in our electric grid. So making that move with our buildings is really important. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
Hi,
So
Amanda.
just some quick details on kind of what's in our memo, and we have a pretty good grid that lays out the plan for many years to come. And I think, to start with remodels, we really want to make sure that we're making buildings airtight before we are requiring solar. So, requiring any remodels to get an energy assessment, which CORE provides for $100, and kind of getting a baseline air leakage, and then improving that air leakage at the end of the remodel. And if it's a large remodel, requiring some solar on the roof, and of course, requiring a certain amount of solar for both residential and commercial. So this would be all buildings. The percentage differs if you're going to be an all-electric building, or if you will be electric and gas. So obviously, if you're electric and gas, we are requiring more solar, and kind of incentivizing you to go all-electric by requiring less. We're also want to require that all homes over 2,000 square feet will have a HERS rating. Any homes under 2,000 square feet have the option to comply prescriptively still with the energy code, just kind of, asking that their envelope is a little better than code minimum. And then, of course, the HERS scores will be all above code minimum. As far as electric ready, we would like to require that all buildings are battery, electric, and EV ready. And this will entail, that the electrical panel and breakers and everything is sized appropriately, that the building is able to be all electric. 'Cause that's the number one problem. I think it would, if we require it and it's not capable of actually doing that. And also, not necessarily, we wouldn't be requiring battery storage right now, but thinking about doing that in the future. And it would be incentivized in our SBRs. And so, a part of this ordinance rewrite and adoption, it would be rewriting the sustainable building regulations. And after kind of running this program for the last 3-4 years and going through our amendment in 2018 for the SBRs, there's just some issues with some points, and so when we go through the first reading, you'll go through and see kind of where we're changing some of the sustainable building regulations. And then we want to revamp our REMP, the Renewable Energy Mitigation Program. Our fees are pretty outdated, and we want to align it more with what the rest of the community is doing, and also adding like you're gonna have like exterior heaters and fireplaces, something that we're seeing a lot more of, and we've never seen them before. Kind of addressing those, putting numbers to those, putting offsets, so you're able to mitigate that energy use on site. I think that's all I have.
Questions, guys?
That's one.
Yeah.
So like when it comes to electrification, like you do have it in here, I think by 2031, town has no gas purchased by the town. The only concern I have is what happens when it comes to like a natural disaster. So let's take Lake Christine, where the power poles are ready to burn down and we have no electric grid. How is our police and fire gonna function if they can't use a natural gas generator? Just a question.
Very good question. I think that Holy Cross is working on providing solar banks for especially, the hospitals and other places that would need to be essentially their own microgrid. And I mean, if worse comes to worse, you could have a gas generator, but I mean, I think the goal is to really focus on some battery storage and being able to be your own island.
And I mean, I like the whole idea. I just think
Yeah.
that's one part that would be worth addressing in the whole deal is like, unfortunately, yeah, natural gas isn't good, but having a hospital that can run or fire department that can function, police department, those are obviously top of the priority.
Well, they're already talking about Aspen Valley Hospital trying to be a microgrid. I thought that was what I read, was that all these places eventually are gonna have storage capacity to be able to handle that, because the sun will still shine.
Yeah.
And they'll be able to recharge those battery banks. So I think, yeah, when I read it, I was like, wow, microgrids, and that's something that we will need to consider if and when we do a new police station and stuff like that.
Well, I compliment you guys on the memo and the graphics. They were all very clear. A couple of questions, however. Relative to the solar requirement, we have a relatively high sort of number of exceptions where there's tree shading or topographic shading that beyond the control of the landowner and the building owner. So what would be the provision if we come out and do a feasibility assessment and find out that the trees are blocking the sun to the degree that we just can't make for an economic kind of solar installation, PV panels? Is there a cash in lieu arrangement, or what's the thinking there?
There is. So, there's either a cash in lieu, or we could do an off-site mitigation. We don't want to be cutting down trees to get more solar, so, we definitely want to be able to work with those property owners.
And the electric ready sort of provision, is that just upgrading electrical panels? Is there more to that than, is that basically
There's a
it?
little more to that, but that is the bulk of it, and then just having like the physical space to have batteries if we wanted batteries later, and to provide wiring for an electric vehicle charging unit.
Yeah, all the conduit and things, all those things you can do while the building's being built, so it's not as expensive to do it after.
I would just like to ask Mitch from the building department side, if there's any pushback from contractors or when they're going through these. I know I had talked to someone doing a remodel, and I just want to make sure we keep it simple also, so that it's we're not having to go through hundreds of pages of different things trying to figure out what we need to do to be in compliance.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. That's a really good question to have. You know, it's in order to make these moves, there's a lot of physical and materials that have to be dealt with. Just to convert something all electric can be fairly simple, or it can be, you know, have a lot of complications to it. For the most part, contractors are accepting a lot of the moves into full electric. They're happy to do so. But the feasibility and the mechanics of doing this can be quite a bit more extensive than really you see on paper. It's a long conversation to have, and there's really no short answer to what you asked.
We're gonna find out when we do the public hearings.
Information sessions.
Or the information sessions, you know, we're definitely inviting all the contractors, and we would like their input and perspectives.
A couple things to keep in mind with it is, one, because it's happening throughout the whole valley, that the contractors are much more open, not only just open, but they're getting used to it, right? They're already doing it in Carbondale, they know it's coming up throughout the whole valley, and so you won't get a lot of pushback just in Basalt. It will be sort of the accepted, the norm, you know, with everyone, which is one of the advantages of sort of doing this all at once, and the fact that all of our communities are looking at adopting very similar amendments or requirements, because then it makes the building industry really have to step up and step into those new norms all at once, which is really helpful. Another thing is, we went through this recently in Carbondale, and had almost no pushback. I was shocked. I mean, I was fully ready for, you know, they were sort of the first ones to really do, to require a lot more solar on their residential buildings, and we held the info sessions and, you know, opened it up for comment, and we had one contractor come who challenged it, and that was it. I think they know it's coming, and I think a lot of them are very much on board with really understanding the reasons behind it and wanting to see those changes made.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, I'm fully behind this. I mean, when we declared the climate emergency, I wanted to see stuff like this come forward. So I think, you know, the contracting world is, you know, this is the future anyway. So the training and everything else, and that's one thing. If we do here, you know, if we're doing it as a whole valley, we have to work with the contractors to be retrained to be able to do this. But I'm fully in support of moving forward with this. I think this is, you know, this is part of the emergency that we declared, and we see it all the time. And before we see another fire, all these other things, let's see if we can start mitigating all this stuff. So I'm in favor of it.
And I was just gonna ask if there were any enablement motions, kind of with training and things like that, underway already that you guys were aware of in the valley, in the region. Because I think that's gonna be really important to make this happen, and so people can adhere to the code.
Yeah, there's a lot of things happening. It's great. We have a group that's tri-county, so Eagle County Collaborative, Clear, Core. We're all working together to address training issues. So we've had several workshops, and, you know, with COVID, we haven't been able to do an in-person training, but there've been quite a few. There's been several webinars and things that have done some training for contractors. We're starting to have meetings with CNC, looking at, can we create a program, if we don't have enough across the state, there aren't enough HVAC professionals to meet the demand. And passing these types of requirements really just sends that signal that people need to get on board and that this is an opportunity. And it may slow some things down for a little bit because we may not have the full workforce, but I think that's okay. We're sending a really strong signal that says, okay, this needs to be happening. So.
They can read the roadmap, right?
Yeah, exactly. And everybody's working together on it. The state's got a subcommittee that's working on it.
Kind of had a related but different question to Bill's, just about, kind of circumstances where homeowners either can't or the circumstances permit them to adopt alternative energy. And I'd like to see if there weren't other things that we could do that are not related to new construction, but related to pre-existing buildings. And to make a long story pretty short, we had wanted to install solar on our home, but either because of the county setbacks or because of other factors with our house, the orientation, the aspect, we just weren't going to generate that much.
Yeah.
So we wanted to do a distributed system with 4 houses in our HOA, and we were told, sorry, can't do that. That violates rules. Now, Chris and Brian subsequently came back and said, dang, I wish we had known. We could have figured that out. But the ship already sailed, and one of the homeowners installed his own grid and is now powering his house, which leads to the next question. When homeowners try to install grids, either on new construction or old, frankly, he was the object of a certain amount of NIMBYism, a certain amount of, we don't like that in our view shed. So what is Green Team, what can the council do to insulate people from that type of opposition and have a seniority of needs that, frankly, trumps the others, that simply expresses our commitment to green energy? How do we do that through the Green Team and through council, through ordinance or something else?
I think a lot of that is just outreach and education and case studies. And, there's a huge education component to all of this right now, of getting our, throughout the whole state, throughout the world, really, right?
Yeah.
To help people really understand the measures we need to take. And I think the biggest thing you can do is just be leaders and and take that step and illustrate one, like the example you were talking about. We don't know that those are those barriers until somebody tries to do it, right? And that's how we learn. So taking that example and being willing to share it, I think, is one of the ways. In these recommendations, one of the things is allowing some equipment in the setbacks, making exemptions for that, because that is an issue, especially with existing buildings, because they are built right up to the edge.
Right.
And then just really changing our paradigm, and that is just talking about it. Everybody sitting here talking about it, sharing your stories, talking about the importance.
Getting the HOAs on board.
Getting HOAs on board.
Yeah.
And organizations like CORE just continuing to do outreach and really trying to do that messaging.
Which also raises the issue. It was really disappointing when CORE cut Eagle out of the, whatever, the reimbursement or that program. So if we can encourage them to
We are encouraging all the time. We would love to see that not be the case, so.
Yeah, because that was really
that's
valuable.
conversation
That
with
wasn't a
other
core
electeds
decision.
Makes a big
That was a
difference.
political decision.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Whatever the decision, it made it less viable for us.
Yes, yeah, that was definitely not at the organization level, but.
I was just going to ask, kind of further to, some of the existing limitations. I know Holy Cross is a stakeholder in this process, but like right now, to my knowledge, if you install solar, whatever excess you create goes into the grid. Have you already negotiated provisions such that you could put that excess into battery storage, and Holy Cross is okay with that?
Yeah, well, they actually have a battery program. They want you to install batteries, and they
Okay.
want you to put it into your batteries, and they'll pay, actually, if you're in their territory, they will pay you for part of that. It's called
Okay.
their Power Plus program, and anybody's interested in batteries, I strongly encourage you to look at it.
I actually
They
have.
pay about 80% of the cost of your battery, but so they can access it so that they can pull that energy when they need it, to avoid them having to buy that energy from a coal-fired power plant. They can
Right.
then pull it off your batteries. It's a great program, and they're just now doing it for commercial. I want to say it's just for it's very limited for commercial, but but it is available for commercial also. Yeah, it's a really exciting program. I'm sure Mary can talk a lot more about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
All right, additional comments, questions? Thank you guys for the update. Good to know. Sarah, do you have any more you want?
Oh, I just, to get to part of what Commissioner Vontae was speaking about too, is that the Green Team is working on developing a program for 2022 that deals with retrofits and really how to get at, new construction is one thing, but how do we really bring and incentivize those retrofits? And so we'll be bringing that forward to council in the new year.
Great, nice. Good deal, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next order of business will require council to sit as a local liquor authority, so I would entertain a motion to move the town council convene as a local liquor authority.
Mayor, move the town council convene as the local liquor authority.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. We are now a local liquor authority. So, Pam, I think you are in charge of item 7A here, which is public hearing and review of an application for a new fermented malt beverage, FMA, license for the Willits General Store, LLC, doing business as Willits General Store. So Pam.
Okay, that is correct. If anybody's having trouble hearing me, just let me know. I'll take my mask down. Edwin Piper is here representing the applicants this evening. This is a scheduled public hearing, and staff would suggest the local liquor authority hear from staff concerning the application, allow the applicant an opportunity to make comments and present any comments they wish related to their application, and then take questions and comments from members of the liquor authority and open the public hearing for public comment. It might be well, too, I believe we have some members of the audience this evening here to speak on this matter, and it might be well to then go back to the applicant if he can answer any of the questions or comments raised by the applicants, or excuse me, by the public. So Willits General Store submitted an application for a new fermented malt beverage license. Back in the day, 3-2 beer was allowed. And in 2019, that flipped over so that the 3-2 issue went not away, but it turned into a fermented malt beverage. And so the 3-2 designation was no longer required. A lot of craft beers and that sort of thing started to come forward. And so these fermented malt beverages who were in liquor stores previously could now be in grocery stores taking the place of the 3-2 and in convenience stores taking place of the 3-2 licensing, or the beers. So if approved, this application would allow for the sale of fermented malt beverages for off-premise consumption at Willits General Store. They have proposed 2 small coolers, I believe, in their store at this time. The local licensing authority is required to hold a public hearing. The property has been posted and notice published for a public hearing on this. I believe I said the applicants previously held a retail liquor store license at this property in an adjacent portion of the building, which was then transferred to Willits Fine Wine LLC, and then they moved over to their current location by Whole Foods. So we have been through the investigating agencies. They have made their comments. They're written into the memo. I won't go through each one of them. There are no criminal violations or incidents that would prevent the applicants from possessing liquor licenses. It doesn't appear that there are any permits required for the installation of these coolers. But if there is, the applicant obviously has to obtain those permits. What else? The applicant fingerprints have been submitted. We haven't gotten the fingerprints back yet from the state, but during the local investigation, we have not found any reason that the applicants would be would have any violations or prevent them from possessing liquor licenses. So, findings, there are no prior licenses have been denied at this location or within 500 feet of this location in the past 2 years. The applicant has possession of the property for the term of the license. There are no municipal zoning laws prohibiting the sale of alcohol at the location. The building on the application is not located within 500 feet of any public or parochial school or the principal campus of any college, university, or seminary. This is the first FMB type of license requested within the Willits area or within the town. And a petition submitted by the applicants that shows that they have 40 signatures of adults in favor of the granting of this license. It would allow for the consumption off the licensed premise. It's packaged liquor, so they would have to take it away to consume it. And no public comments had been filed in writing as of the writing of this memo. And so based on the investigation and findings previously stated in this memo, after hearing from the applicant and the public, I just want to say the applicant does meet the conditions of the code for the issuance of an FMB license, and a recommendation and suggested motion are set forth in the memo for the Liquor Authority.
Thank you. Gentlemen, would you like to make any comments relative to the application?
Mr. Mayor, did you want to begin with the applicant?
Yeah, you want the applicant.
Yeah, the applicant. Yeah. I thought you were the applicant.
Mayor Kane, Town Council, thank you for the opportunity to sit before you and your time and consideration in this matter. My name is Edwin Piper. I am here for the owners of Willits General Store. And this application is been born out of customer complaints and comments. We are listening to our base. They want something that is quick and convenient. We offer a little bit of everything. That's our business model, is convenience. So after being beaten over the head by quite a few different customers, we've relented and submitted application for your consideration.
Okay. So, any questions of council? We'll open the public hearing, and anyone from the public who would like to comment on this application, please feel free to address council. Looks like we have a taker here.
And if you could come on up to the podium
here.
And while you're doing that, I'm just going to make an announcement that if anyone's watching from home and they want to participate, there's a link on the first page of the agenda on the Agenda Center, and you can hit that link, or you can call 1-346-248-7799, and the webinar ID is 899-8151-6700. And just to note that of all the panelists, I know that none of them are here for this item. They're here for other items. And I'm not sure, Pam, about the person that's the attendee that is also another item. So none of the people that are currently watching on Zoom are here for that item. So
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
My name is Robbie Bella. I've been the beer buyer at Four Dogs Wines and Spirits for the better part of 10 years now. This town council knows me from my last opposition with Whole Foods' malt beverage license. This Whole Foods opposition has its differences, for sure, in comparison to the Willits General Stores. However, the underlying reason for council's rejection of Whole Foods' application was the lack of need. As former Councilman Auden Schindler was quoted saying in his response to Whole Foods, I think council should reject this application simply because of need. And then the former mayor, Whitsitt, was quoted saying that she was not convinced of the need. And the need seems to be the word of the day. In the Whole Foods case, well over 500 Basalt residents signed a petition in our favor and convinced town council to vote 7-0 against the need for another malt beverage license in the Willits Town Center. It's without doubt that a malt beverage license at Willet's General Store will hurt business at Four Dogs, Aljabel Liquors, and Elja Beverage, all of which are within approximately a quarter mile of the proposed licensee. The up and down valley commuter business we all see will certainly stop at the roundabout, get their gas, their food, their cigarettes, their six-pack, and venture no further into Willet's. This will likely lower sales at many Willet's businesses and potentially reduce sales tax revenue to the town. This loss of business at Four Dogs will directly impact the quarterly bonuses we distribute to every one of our employees. I just want to thank the council for the opportunity to bring my perspective. And I want to ask, does Willet's need this? And when will this need stop? Will I be back here in a few months opposing the malt beverage application for the Shell gas station across the street? So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to address council? Come on up.
Good evening, council. My name's Curtis. I'm the GM at Four Dogs. I really just wanted to reiterate or more so add to what Robbie was saying. We're not a franchise, a big corporation. We're just a local shop. Four Dogs is the only one. And, we give out these quarterly bonuses. We try to stay competitive with how we pay our employees. And the biggest way that we do that is with quarterly bonuses. And those are based off of growth. And, and it goes back to needs, like how much do we really need, another beer retailer. When I think we're doing enough for the community there, and I think the community already spoke on that before.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to address council? Okay. Council will close the public hearing and council comments, discussion, question?
I think I'm still where previous council was. I don't see the need for it. I'm just coming out there. We don't need another beer store right there. That's where I stand.
Okay.
I just wanted a point of clarification. Robbie, you said that we're going to lose sales tax revenue. Is Willet's General Store not in the town of Basalt?
No, it
It
is. It is.
I think the point that he was making was that people would stop at the roundabout and not come in and patronize the other stores perhaps, because once you go to Four Dogs, you're kind of in the
intercept.
You're next to Willett, or you're next to Whole Foods, you're there, or whatever.
Visiting other retailers.
I honestly think that we need to have a larger conversation at some point, and I'm just using this as an opportunity to bring this up because this has been on my mind for a while, with liquor licenses in general, not just this particular one, but new restaurants and so on and so forth. I think Basalt has been small enough up to this point where adding another liquor license was no big deal, but now we're getting to the point where we're kind of saturated, and so every new liquor license that we add draws business away from somewhere else, as Four Dogs is pointing out, and it'll be true of restaurant liquor licenses as well. So I think at some point we really do need to kind of have a broader discussion about like what our stance is going forward, and if there's a limit, if there's not a limit, and if we just like see what happens. I don't know. I just think that at some point we probably want to have that conversation.
Yeah, the concept of need when it comes to alcoholic beverages seems like a peculiar kind of concept. Carrie.
Well, I was here when we did you didn't quote me, but I was here during the conversation on Whole Foods. For me, Whole Foods was a direct, that was within 500 feet. And that was, everything about that application was, to me, the need was, why do you have to have two right next to each other? Where this is, without that, it's beyond 500 feet. And I agree with Elise. We talked about it because we have a certain amount of pot stores that we allow, marijuana stores, and how many liquor stores and are we gonna allow? And I don't necessarily have an issue with more restaurant having liquor licenses. I have more issue with, how many liquor stores for sale do we need as a community, because, we limited the amount of marijuana selling places in the town. Do we do that for alcohol, and probably Jeff's gonna tell me, that's illegal, you can't do that, but, you know, we convinced Whole Foods that it was a mistake to try to do that, and I know they probably could have pushed it further if they really wanted to, but they saw the community come out completely against it, where this time I don't see the community totally against it. But, you know, this is a tough one, because just how many places do you allow it or don't allow it? But last time, you know, to me, it was a big thing, was I didn't want it right next door. And this one's this one is beyond the 500-foot limit.
A few quick things to help with the discussion. There have been some statutory changes related to the distances between liquor stores. And so for new liquor stores, I believe which is not what this application is, it's now 1,500 feet. There was I think a quirk with the Whole Foods application and kind of the basis in which they were kind of submitting the license. Now for fermented malt beverage license such as this, the statutory distance buffer is 500 feet. And I'm not sure if the memo said exactly what the distance between stores here, but it was obviously more than that.
It's over 800 feet to Elder Beverage, excuse me, and over 1,200 feet to Four Dogs.
Okay.
But yes, we have new statutory laws concerning liquor stores themselves and the distances, and the way Basalt is set up, we probably wouldn't have another liquor store
Not in
availability. There
no.
wouldn't be a place for one.
Right. Yeah. So just
Given the distances.
that legal point to keep in mind, and then with respect to council evaluating this application as well, one of the requirements under the liquor code is that the applicant has to present that their basically the reasonable needs and desires of the community are not met, and they can do that in a number of ways, including by testimony that there's simply not enough demand, submitting a petition signed by folks that are testifying that they think that the community's underserved. The applicant did include a petition with the application, and then otherwise just general consideration of the other types of liquor establishments providing the same type of product. And then, of course, on evaluating on the other side, it might be other testimony from the public or petitions or surveys or things like that that could have been submitted. So if the council's making a finding one way or the other, that seems to be the kind of the crux of this particular application, is whether or not the reasonable needs and desires of the neighborhood have been met.
But no, just so I'm clear once more, sorry. I mean, I understand that we continue to refer to this as a liquor license because at the end of the day, beer is a liquor.
Yeah.
But you're not selling booze. You're selling kombucha and beer. That's what you're proposing to sell.
Correct, just,
Okay.
and in all honesty, probably some basic beer for our commuting customers.
Yeah, so this is a fermented malt beverage license, which falls under the liquor code, so I'm using it
Still
more
a licensing authority.
colloquially
but-
as liquor, yeah.
We were gonna go out for a couple FMBs after the meeting tonight.
I'm going to a liquor
Mayor, I would move that we reconvene the local liquor authority at a future time and continue the public hearing and allow Willett General Store to prove their case of need.
Is there a
Second.
second for that one?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion or?
Do we have to set don't have to set a date?
Yeah.
Meeting of January 11th. Is that you would have?
Move it to a
I
date
accept that.
As do I.
Restate it.
What's that?
Oh, there's a motion and a second.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, never mind. We're good.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Is this a roll call, Jeff, or do we?
You can either voice vote or
Okay.
roll call.
So let make sure we understand the motion. The motion is that we will reconvene at the January 11th meeting and ask for Willett's General Store to provide more evidence as to need. Is that the gist of it? Okay. So, been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. So, we're gonna see you January,
I say no.
was there a no?
I say no.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gary said no. Okay.
No, I said no.
Okay, you
Just so
said
it's on
no.
the record.
Okay.
I
Well,
said
and to
got it.
clarify, Councilman
What is
Infante,
evidence of need? Like a petition with 1,000 signatures?
Yeah, I mean, that's just,
So,
it's like
t-
really
there's-
open-ended whole deal there. Doesn't make much sense.
So again, there's a statutory requirement to show that there is, the evidence of need and desires of the neighborhood aren't being met. And so one way to do that's through a petition. And again, the applicant did submit a petition as part of his application materials. And so if there's other evidence that can
That's
come
why I'm
forward,
curious.
you know, the applicant testified that he's heard, you know, at least through his customers, that there's offered that testimony regarding the need. Other surveys or that could be done in the community. The council's consideration of the other number of established fermented malt beverage providers in the area, things of that nature are evidence of need.
am I missing the details of that petition in here?
It's in the memo.
It is under the clerk's comments, I believe. Where was it?
Yeah, there was,
Yeah.
You know, in the interest of, you know, kind of full disclosure, I guess, and getting a sense of the council, you know, I'll just let you know kind of, and counselors feel free to weigh in. You know, I probably spend more money than I should at Four Dogs, but it's not on beer. You have a great wine store there. And I got to tell you honestly, what these guys are proposing doesn't strike me as a serious threat to the viability of Four Dogs. This valley is growing dramatically. Demand is going through the roof. There's enough demand to go around. This does look like a legitimate request for a convenience. And, you know, it's somebody that wants to grab a six-pack and head home and not duke it out with parking at Whole Foods. You know, I think we have a larger kind of consideration here about the economic vitality of the town, and this just makes Willett stronger. And so I will just disclose my view of this. I just think, and I think our discretion's a little limited. You know, basically all the criteria have been met, and so I'm well inclined towards granting this. But I will defer to my fellow councilors and be interested in hearing more about the concept of need as it pertains to alcoholic beverages. I think it's an interesting discussion. So that's
I
that.
mean, it's just one way to.
Council is a procedural matter. There's been a motion,
Yeah.
a second, and a
It's
vote
already
on
been
continuing
selected.
on a vote on continuing the public hearing. So if there wants to be further discussion on it, we should probably do it at that
Okay.
January hearing.
I may be too late. May I respond to
No.
the questions and concerns?
No, we
Okay.
closed the public hearing, so.
Sorry.
I
thought I was going to be given
We'll
a
see
chance
everybody
to
in
respond.
January.
Sorry.
You know, that's where we
You
are.
will before there is
Okay,
a vote, final vote on
my
the
apologies.
petition.
Thank you.
Yeah, just in January.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Mayor, I move the town council adjourn the local liquor authority and reconvene the town council.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays, Glenn? That's
See you in
good.
January.
See you. Thank you.
I gave you my 1 nay bill.
All right. So we move on.
Steve, do you want to come on up?
Our next order of business is,
That's what the fucking it is.
item number 7B is resolution number 54, a resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving applicant's administrative appeal and directing the Technical Review Committee to approve a mural on the Two Rivers Road facade of Free Range Restaurant Building on Parcel C of the town of the Basalt River Park Development. So, Steve, good to see you again. Long time no see.
Exactly.
So, who's got this one? This is James.
This item is consideration of a resolution that would direct the Technical Review Committee, or the TRC as they're known, to approve of a wall art mural of a cow on the Free Range Restaurant Building in the Basalt River Park development. As background, the applicants requested to provide 2 signs and a mural at the Free Range Restaurant. The TRC approved the 2 signs, but not the mural of the cow, as the 2 signs would meet the CSC zone district requirements, but the mural was in excess of the CSC signage requirements. The applicant appealed the TRC approval per the provisions that are in the Basalt River Park ordinance. To ask for the mural's approval is the appeal request. In terms of the staff comments on the request, the original design of the mural was basically the free-range restaurant emblem. The applicants have since revised the design not to be the emblem and to be more generic representation of a cow. It should be noted that there are 2 murals that were approved for the nonprofit property adjacent to the free-range property in the Basalt River Park approvals. Staff is supportive of permitting the mural, but staff feels that it is a council-level decision. And the Basalt Public Arts Commission reviewed the mural and was supportive of it. So you do have a resolution in your packet that would direct the Technical Review Committee to approve of the mural. It should be noted that Basalt Public Arts Committee and the town attorney are working on criteria for consideration of future murals for when we have more requests. So this evening, staff would suggest taking comments from the owner, Steve Humble, and then providing council discussion. It's not a public hearing, so it's just a public meeting, so you do not need to take public comment. Ultimately, if you're comfortable, you could approve of the resolution that directs the TRC to approve of the mural. Steve, do you have additional comments for council?
You know, a little bit maybe. First of all, thank you for everyone's time and consideration this evening. Those of you that have been to our old restaurant, or some of you have seen our new restaurant today, will know that we love supporting local. We support local farms and ranches, and that's our whole, ethos with the restaurant is we're supporting local. We are employing local kids, and we're teaching them a trade, and we also support local artists, and we have done from day one. We provide them a space in which to show their art, because they're maybe not good enough or maybe not well known enough to be showing their things in a public gallery. And so we've always done that. We just figured that was fun, and it was part of being part of a community. So Will Young is actually our architect from CCY and a budding artist, and he was like, can we do this, and can I do it? And he was all excited about it, and we said, sure. It's a big blank wall. It seems like a perfect setting. And so that was why we started the petition of like, hey, this is exactly in tune with what we're all about and trying to promote. And we also feel that it's an appropriate image because it comes back to the farming and ranching community that we're tied to with the restaurant, but also the heritage of the valley as well. So we felt like it was an appropriate image. That's pretty much how we came up with the idea, and we'd like to see it happen if we can.
I think we're going to get to this quickly here.
I mean,
So
unless there's
questions of
major
Steve?
discussion.
Why are we having this discussion?
Because we have a strict town signage thing, so I think it's fine that this comes in front of us, but.
What constitutes a sign?
Well, that's the question, Bill, and that's something that we should have in a deeper conversation outside of this one.
But why are we trying to legislate what constitutes art as well? For God's sake, I mean, how much are we regulating what is, what constitutes public and non-public art?
Okay, so council, just if I may quickly, on a constitutional level, the way signs have been regulated has changed over the last 5 years. And without going into a full discussion of that tonight, fundamentally, it's that you can't regulate signs based on content, and that there is, with respect to murals, there is a diminished ability to distinguish between a mural and a sign as a constitutional matter. Now, for our code and our zoning, there's an allowance of a certain number of signs, and based on what was presented, the mural kind of was in that mural sign area. There is an allowance within the site-specific ordinance for this property to allow for an additional mural to be placed on the property. However, given how that was written, there was an express authority for the TRC to make that approval, or at least not without council backing. And so, frankly, this was a procedural way to accommodate the applicant. And so that this is, that's a little background on the, the law on signs and murals. And if we need a further, more detailed discussion on that, happy to do it. It was kind of beyond the context of this particular application. And again, this was a procedural remedy to the problem presented by this applicant in presenting it in this way, so.
And we talked to BPAC about a code amendment that we would have that puts kind of BPAC in the role of kind of reviewing this. But, here, we're just trying to get Steve's sign for free range, and his mural, and so this was way.
Mayor, I move the town council approve resolution number 54, series of 2021.
Second.
And also encourage us to have a
Competition
further
to
conversation
approve.
about signs in the town at a staff and council level.
Right. I mean, we have regulated the bejesus out of what constitutes a park bench. I would hate to think we go down that road with public art. That would be insanity.
Till there's a neon
So,
sign you can see from your
we
house.
have a motion. Do we have a second?
Then you're gonna be angry.
It's been seconded. David seconded it. So, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And
Thank
I
you,
would
Steve.
encourage you to go.
It looks terrific. It looks like it's going to be fun. It's going to add to the color and
Longhorn.
character and the lore
It's a
and the
Basalt
legend.
Longhorn, simple.
I like the one with the body and the hair.
They say it looks like a Brahma. Is there some significance there, or is it not a Brahma?
It was Will's interpretation of kind of somewhere between our Scottish Highland cow and a longhorn for the town. So it's kind of,
Basalt Longhorn.
I don't
Okay,
question
we're
artists.
going to
I
go
just
with
allow
that.
them to do what they do.
We'll leave it there.
Jeff left.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good luck with it,
Appreciate
and
it.
it looks great. Make it good.
We will. Thank you.
Okay.
That's what we worry.
Okay. Next order of business. This is item number 7C, resolution, excuse me, do I have to swing this gavel?
Yes.
At him.
Don't make me come down there.
Created
So,
this.
this is item 7C, resolution number 55, series of 2021. A resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, authorizing the engagement of services with Land Plus Shelter and Allen Ford Architects to perform design services for the early childhood facilities at this, I presume, it's both at parcel 2E, is it, and Stotts Mill?
Correct, yep.
Both of them, okay. So, and Andy Korber is on the call also.
Yeah, we have Andy Korber and Pam. If there's any way you can get Alan, who's in attendees, as a panelist, that would be great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We're here today, or I'm here today, bringing you an agreement for design services for early childhood facilities. The Basalt Master Plan speaks to childcare as a burden in tandem with affordable housing and identifies the goal of supporting affordable childcare. The Basalt Forward 2030 effort studied a childcare center on Cypress Meadows Parcel 2E, and although the project wasn't identified for voter approval and capital funding, it was recognized as it was an important project to the community and that the town should find a way to help this project move forward. Town staff advertised an RFP for a schematic design of an early childhood facility on Parcel 2E and for the design of tenant finishes for the required child care facility that's part of the Stotts Mill development. The town received 3 good proposals. Each included various consultants as part of their team, and the town staff really greatly appreciated the work of Megan Birch with Eagle County and Shirley Ritter, who is also on the line. She's with the City of Aspen Kids First program. So Megan and Shirley helped town staff both review those proposals. We interviewed all 3 proposers, and they were involved with that as well. So we really appreciate their help. And then ultimately, the interview committee identified the team of Landon Shelter and Allen Ford Architects as the best firm for the project. Right now, the town has $25,000 in the 2022 budget for the design of the Stotts Mill tenant finishes in that facility. And then the funding for the conceptual design of the Parcel 2E facility will be a supplemental appropriation ordinance that will add on to the 2022 budget. And one thing I wanted to mention is staff also has an RFQ that's being advertised for a provider for the Cypress Meadows Parcel 2E space. So eventually the provider would work, in partnership to inform a conceptual design. And we can get into that further if you have any questions around that. But tonight we do have Andy Korber and with Landon Shelter and Allen Ford on the line, and if they have anything to add to my summary, they'd be welcome to at this point.
Thank you, Catherine. We're really looking forward to it, and thank you to the council and Shirley, we met recently.
So staff is here to answer any questions you all might have tonight and would recommend approval of this resolution number 55, authorizing the town manager to approve a contract with Landon Shelter for this conceptual design project.
I had just one comment, and I don't know what latitude there is either in the RFP or how we went about the process, but I guess personally I would just encourage us and the design team to take a pretty broad view on 2E. I mean, I think first and foremost it's about childcare, but it's a pretty big parcel, and I would really like to encourage us to, given the previous discussion we had tonight about housing, is to look at a multi-use option for that site and see if there aren't compatible uses that would be synergistic and would really support a more more sort of a greater vitality and sort of more life to the site rather than have a standalone kids center.
Sorry to interrupt, but we did include that in the RFP.
Oh, okay, good.
As when they explored the opportunities at the site, a community space and affordable housing was identified. I think
cool.
That'll be part of the update.
Bill, I am entirely with you. I have two dimensions of my comment. One, I'm not sure I understand why the town of Basalt is paying to design a Stotts Mill child care facility. I realize that our engagement on that might be relatively limited, but that's a private project. It's the obligation of the private developer, so I don't necessarily see why public resources should be spent for that purpose, helping them to design what they're obligated to do. But I'm also unconvinced that 2E's best and highest use is for childcare, given all of the conversations we've had, and also given that 20 years have gone by since 2E was originally platted or PUD'd, whatever the term of art is, for childcare, and when subsequently we are now the beneficiaries of another parcel of land deeded by Michael Lipkin over by the rugby field. I don't know what the designation is for that parcel, but it would sure seem to me that we have options, and to presume that 2E has got to be dedicated to childcare and that we would hire someone to design when we haven't explored these other options would be premature in my mind.
Yeah, I think we ought to explore childcare. I'm not trying to exclude that. I just think that, I just walked it last week and it just feels like it's a pretty sizable parcel and maybe could accommodate a more diverse and interesting program than simply childcare. Maybe childcare gets integrated with something else. Not fermented malt beverages, but
So, I mean, the Child Care Coalition's been looking at 2E for a really long time for childcare, and affordable housing was considered as a piece of it. I think this is a type of site where, we need to look at town needs, and childcare is one of those needs. And so I'd love to see if we can design a site that could do both. But, you know, the reality for this is too, we're gonna have to deal with the cost of this. And to get a developer to come in and actually make this happen, you might have to do this in phases. And so, you know, I think having a team on board to deal with that, that would be good. And Stotts Mill, they provide the shell, we have to finish it. We gotta, you know, Stotts Mill wasn't like they have the provider, they do the finishes and everything else. So this is, the big piece of this fee is for 2E. There's a little bit to go to help Stotts Mill get to the next step of an actual provider coming in and making it all happen. So I'm in favor of this, so.
When is the RFP, or when did the RFP close for a childcare provider? Didn't we put that out?
Yeah.
We did, and it's not closed yet.
It's not closed yet.
January.
It's in the middle of January, and I don't have the exact date in front of me.
Gotcha.
But
And that's gonna help decide on what uses we actually do in some of this stuff. So that, you know, getting a design team on board, then if you see what the availability of actual providers are, then you can get to the, you know, what we designed this for. But I think if we don't do this, if we don't start designing this and really figuring it out, we're not gonna tap into, you know, the money that's out there to help build childcare and affordable housing.
Yeah, and the other thing I think we've learned in the last 40 years in this valley is that childcare is inextricably tied to housing. So housing and pricing of housing requires a two-income family. So by definition, childcare is an essential in order to achieve housing. So it's, you know, it's all about affordable living, and I think we got to have the wisdom to see that, you know, this is just a critical component in this community. So I'm all for definitely proceeding with this contract, but I just don't want us to miss an opportunity if there's a bigger deal, and maybe there's another kind of solution where if there's a housing option, there's a variation on the theme from Stotts Mill where a private entrepreneur could build housing and then deliver a core and shell of a facility, so we don't have to try to scrape $12 million together to try to achieve a freestanding child care center. So just some thoughts.
I'm supportive of it. I think we gotta start somewhere. And it'd be pretty short-sighted not to at least entertain what it's gonna look like.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Bill?
I think everyone will be fully in agreement on the perception of need and the reality of need for childcare, so that's not the debate. But this strikes me very much as the kind of rubber stamp that I've been faced with before. What kind of childcare facility do you want on 2E is the basic question you're asking. And if our RFP asks for an architect to design a childcare facility as opposed to multi-use, community serving, potentially to include, guess what? We're going to get a childcare facility. And there will be no other discussion of any other potential higher and better use for that property, nor will there be any exploration of alternative sites. So I myself am actually opposed to proceeding with this until we examine the potential for any other sites, such as the rugby field site or any other site.
We have looked at the rugby field site on the Childhood Coalition, and the size of the site and the parking and the traffic requirements for a facility and the size of facility you could place on that site are not, they do not coincide.
Okay.
So that I can tell, we have looked at it, we have brought it up, we have talked about it. I think the problem with this one, Bill, is that this literally has been a continued conversation for 20 years that we have not been able to push forward. And I think this money is well spent, split in between both, mostly for this and some for Stotts Mill. I understand where you're going, but at the same time, in the RFP, it's also requiring to look at both childcare and housing, which I think you would support, like you said earlier. This gets the ball rolling, and we need to see something because that field's just gonna sit there.
Yeah.
And it has to, and I believe Jeff probably doesn't have it all in front of him, or Ryan or Susan could comment, but this piece of land was dedicated to the town with, I don't know the exact language, so I don't want to But this will get the ball rolling. I understand it's a lot of money, but we need to have something to figure out what we can do there. And we've done a lot of, as a child care coalition, we've done land studies. We've had an architect that has put forward some drawings on this, but we need a firm to take it and help the town continue to move forward.
More discussion.
More discussion, or are we ready for a motion?
Oh, we're always ready for a motion, Glenn.
Okay. Let's see, which one am I on? Which one?
Andy, nope, we're not scaring you off here. This is,
just one.
You're
I think
watching.
One little point to add to this is that the deliverable on this is actually 3 options. And in our interview, we spoke really clearly about how we would be looking at housing and looking at the option of a community space with this. So you get a bit of a study. I think that might serve this conversation actually pretty well.
Good.
Mayor, I move.
Just one more question.
Go for it.
We have 25 grand set aside for this, and this is 28, so we're really looking for like 4 grand extra in the supplemental budget.
Catherine, why don't you split it out a little bit for him?
Yeah, so right now we do have 25,000 set aside for the Stotts Mill facility, and there'll be some supplemental that will have to come in to help fund TUI, and Christy might actually be able to provide more detail on this than I, but in the proposal you see before you, that was for 23,000, that was exclusive to the parcel 2E, and then a little over 5,000 that would cover the tenant finishes as part of Stotts Mill.
We're also getting a pretty good discounted rate. I don't know if you guys saw that in there, but like the consulting fees have been discounted. And
So where's the other 20,000 for Stotts Mill then go to the finishes?
We didn't, go ahead.
I guess that's my question is.
Yeah, it's not.
it's not part of this motion.
Yeah.
It's not part of this. It's
But is that 5,000?
5,000 is part of that.
Yeah, okay.
Mayor, I move that town council approve resolution number 55, series of 2021.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No, yes.
Nay.
No or yes?
Yes, no,
No
nay.
and yes?
That is a yes, I am.
Thank you, guys, and look forward to the work. This is going to be fun and long overdue, so.
Thank you.
And Andy, I really
All of us here on
appreciate
this
you
one.
picking up on the fact that we would like to see some options.
Oh, of course, yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Next item, we're up to item number 7D. This is a public hearing and second reading for ordinance number 17, series of 2021, an ordinance of the Town Council, Town of Basalt, Colorado, creating a special fund account for capital construction. Christie.
It's finance time. It's 8 o'clock at night, and I'm sure you guys are just stoked to be starting now to talk about finance. We are looking at, this is the second reading, as you stated, about creating a special fund account for our new building fund, capital construction fund, for all of our bond election proceeds, to fiscally, responsibly and transparently make sure that we're identifying those funds separately from our general fund.
Okay. Questions? We will open the public hearing, see if there are any public comment.
And I won't go through my entire announcement because I did it a couple times, but if you're having trouble, just text 970-379-1514, and I don't believe we have anyone that's an attendee or a panelist that wants to speak on this.
That's correct.
Okay, anyone in the audience? Nope. So with that, I will close the public hearing and ask if there is discussion from council, questions, or whether there is a motion.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt ordinance number 17, series of 2021 on second reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Looks like ordinance number 17 is in the books. So we go to 7E, public hearing, second reading of ordinance number 18, series of 2021. Ordinance of the Town Council, Town of Basalt, Colorado, amending the 2021 budget and providing a supplemental appropriations for the year ending December 31, 2021, related to various revenues and expenditures. Christie.
Thank you, Mayor. I went through this information in detail at the last meeting, so I'm not going to belabor it.
Great.
But basically what we try to do is align our revenues, especially with our revenues in our restricted fund and our general funds, more in line with what we're actually seeing, so that you guys have a good idea of where that is looking to fall, and then just making sure that all of our expenditures for appropriations for each one of our departments is also in line with the requirements of the state law.
So we have about 200 and some K of unanticipated revenue and about 100 and some K of expenditures, so we're like 200 and some K to the good. Is that pretty much it?
That was way too simple.
A little more than that, but yeah,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, like three something.
But I would refer everybody to the Exhibit A supplemental budget for
Okay.
detail. How's that?
Public hearing?
That's not fair, that's like real facts. Okay, any discussion? This is a public hearing, so we will open the public hearing, see if there's any comment for anyone who'd like to call in to comment about ordinance number 18.
Again, no one has indicated that they're not raising their hand or indicating the cell number is up there for someone to text, and no one has texted us that they would like to speak.
Okay.
So we're good, right, Pam?
Correct. No one in here.
Okay, so hearing none, I will close the public hearing and ask if there are any questions of council or if there's a interest in making a motion.
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt ordinance number 18, series of 2021 on second reading.
Second.
And Mr.
Moved
Mayor-
and seconded.
Mr. Mayor, this does require a roll call vote.
It does require a roll call vote, so if it's going to require it, Pam, I think we better do it.
Okay, I'll be happy to. Let's begin with David Knight,
Yes.
Bill Infante,
Yes.
Glenn Drummond,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
and Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Last item of business tonight is resolution number 56, series of 2021, setting the mill levy. A resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, levying general property taxes to help defray the cost of government for the 2022 budget year. So, Christie.
Thank you, Mayor. We've gone through a lot with our mill levies over the last couple of years.
Yes, yes, we have.
Probably an understatement, huh? But I mean, I think that the whole point of that is really to make sure that, that we're all in line with all the laws and making sure that we're in compliance and that everybody fully now understands where we're at on our mill levy rates and how we set those. So in 2019, with everything that happened with the Tabor refund to taxpayers and the subsequent election, we did end up setting our mill levy rate at 5.957 mils. So that's a very set rate that was approved now by all of our electorate. So that is for our general fund operations, and that's our first mill levy rate. Our second mill levy rate is our bond fund mill levy rate. And that was just set November 2nd and approved with our Basalt Forward 2030 election at $950,000, which is a set dollar amount, not a set mill levy rate. So it's a little bit different. But the reason why with bonds you set a set dollar amount is just to make sure then you can repay your bonds at a regular rate each year. So that that was how that mill levy rate was calculated for our bonds. And then there's a third I guess, category is what's called an abatement. And when somebody requests an abatement through the county, we have the right as a town municipal government to reimburse ourselves through a very tiny additional mill levy. And that's what we do here. It was only 0.004. But having said all of that, is right in the middle of the first page, right what James has up there, 2020 mill levy rate was 10.891 mils. and it's gone down to 10.391 mils. So even with the passage of Basalt Forward, we have a reduction in all of our electric's mill levy rate because our assessed valuation has gone up. It's an inverse relationship.
So the tax bill's not necessarily gone down, just the mill levy's gone down because assessed valuation's gone up.
Correct. I mean, so per 100,000, it's gone
Right.
down, is the best way to say it. Per $100,000 of value, it's gone down, is how the mill levy is calculated. But that's pretty much it. I did some other analysis in here for full transparency, so everybody could see that. And Jeff, is there anything else you wanted to add on that?
No, I think you covered it. Yeah, again, I think the main points, well, I said no, but I guess I'll say, I should say yes. I'll add briefly, but yeah, the mill levy for the general fund is going to be 5.9575 until there's voter approval to change that one way or the other. Again, the amounts for the bond are set at an amount necessary to generate the funds to pay the bonds. And so that's why you might see that moving up and down from year to year. And that's really it.
And so the bond one has nothing to do with Tabor. It just has to do with the
It's
bond.
specifically exempted in the language of Tabor, yeah.
Yep.
So this is a resolution. It does not require a public hearing.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve resolution number 56, series of 2020.
Second.
Oh, but I read it.
Reading,
Yeah, it does say 21.
All right, I changed this to 2021.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Resolution number 56 passes. So I think that concludes our business. It's time for a cold FMB, I think.
Not the 3.2.
I love it. FMB, man, that's it. Thank you, guys. Well
Merry
done.
Christmas, everybody.
Happy 2020, or 2021.
Oh, that's right, we're not meeting on the 28th, so it's gonna be it for a while.
You and I are gonna have a private meeting.